I'm ready to cut and fit my wellboard, and also I've got two pieces of wood that are going to stand up here that go on top of the wellboard once it's in place. So I've got to cut those down to size. So what I'm going to do first is mark everything so I can do all my cutting at once. So these are the two strips I've picked out for this, and I'm going to use one of the strips to go on top of, there's a rebate here formed by the inner apron piece, and it gives me a 3/4 inch lip to sit this on, so my apron is going to actually finally end up on there. Then I have my plywood, that's representative of this piece here, and just to get this in place. So I've got the exact height I want here, and I may cut this one slightly proud of my apron and just mark this along here to get the exact sizing. Like that, and then the same on this side. I'm going to do the same here. Those are marked, so I know what to cut those at. Now I'm going to measure from here. This is my wellboard going into its recess here, so I've got 12 5/16. Now yours may not be 12 5/16. Remember, I talked about the plywood not always being equal, but I do want this, if I'm fortunate, I've got 12 5/16 at this end as well, so I can go ahead and mark this 12 5/16. I've got a machined edge here, and I've got my cut edge, my hand cut edge that side. So I'm going to put the mark on here because it gives me a guideline to see, just in case I get some drift or something like that. So 12 5/16. It's a good idea to check your measurements as well. I don't have enough length on this one. These two inside pieces are already cut to length. This is just a guide, really. I've got to cross cut my apron piece to size as well. So am I going to cut it dead on, or am I going to cut it under? I'm going to shoot for my 12 5/16. So I might just have to skim off a very small amount. This goes I'm going to drop my wellboard and see how close I was. I've got my best face uppermost with no patches in it. Does it go? It's pretty close. Just a little shaving off it. Great. I'm going to bring my, oops, wrong one, my Black & Decker workmate in. I've got to cross cut it to length as well yet. So I'm going to clamp this to my apron just to make sure I don't have any slippage. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a leading edge on it slightly, so I'm going to be taking more off this one side than the other. So ever so slightly out of square. The nice thing about this is I don't have to make any allowance because this is plywood and it won't vary in width. It'll stay just the same width. So I can actually have it tight. Because there won't be any shrinkage. I'll go ahead and try that now. It's pretty close. I want to make sure that I'm not pushing this apron off on this side. Feels great. So I'm going to check it here. And I think I have pushed it out a little bit, so I'm going to take a little bit more off. This end was fine. This one I didn't push out, so I'm checking along these lines as well. Actually, there's no gap. I'm still going to take a little bit off. There's no gap between my leg frame and the apron, so it must be slightly more. We'll see. This just gets, I'm keeping it loose because I may want to take my bench apart. So this just really literally gets screwed into place, not glued. Unless you know that yours is going to be permanently in one place for the rest of its life. This is where the real test is. Here. And see whether I'm square or not. So I'm flush here. Feels very nice. and solid. So I'm going to tap this back just ahead, past, so I can plane it like that. So I'm just past here and here, so I can take my plane, plane it flush. I'm using the bench end as a reference surface. I need a little bit more. Once you've got it level, if you tap it past like I just did, then you can take a clear stroke all the way through. And then tap it back flush. Like that. And then we're ready to get this cut to length. So to do that, I want, well, we should look at this and see how that did. Like this. So now I'm very happy with that. Let's use a straight edge here. This is just to get my cut line. Because we're going to cross cut this to length now. And what we're going to do is use this knife wall that we just created here and here. And I'm going to square this from one side to the other. So I want to mark this corner here, and the same on this one to get this exact. This is going to make it nice and crisp when I slide it in place. Nice having a bench to work from all of a sudden. So I'm going to cut through the face. This is the top face. If there's any raggedness, I'd rather it be underneath. I'm trying to avoid that. Cross-cut saw. I'm going to clamp it, I think. I just feel more secure. And I want a little bit of oil on my plate. Again, I know this is going to go in that end. I don't know if it'll fit here. It's close enough, but now I can use the bench to secure this, just for me to plane to the line here. That's that. And this isn't getting glued, so I can go ahead and screw this on the underside, just like we did the bench top. I'll probably stand the bench on end and screw it through from the underside of the bearers. That's it. I may trim all of this up a little bit with the plane later if I need to, but it's so close. I feel really good about this. So now these strips are going to go in here, and I'll simply glue these in place. This one goes here. Screw it from the underside, glue these in place. Try not to get glue between this bottom edge and the wellboard, and I can always remove it later if I ever need to. I don't know if you've ever experienced building your own workbench, but I've built literally hundreds and hundreds of pieces of furniture, and the bench is probably one of the best things you could ever make. It's one of the most enjoyable, and you'll use it throughout your life as a woodworker, especially if you're working with hand tools. So this one is at that stage where I feel pretty excited. It's a very solid workbench. I know you'll enjoy making it, but I still have a few minor details to take care of. I've got to retract the screws that I put in temporarily in the aprons to secure it to the leg frames. and replace that with the bolt. So I'm going to drill the holes through, bolt this up and cinch it tight. That will make it completely solid. I've got to plane this top down, get rid of any undulation in the surface, plane, maybe trim areas that I've done. So those have to all come level and feel level. And then I've got to apply 2 coats of finish. I'm going to use a waterborne finish because I want to seal this surface before I start messing about with a muddy vise or with an oily vise or with any rust or whatever I'm going to encounter when I put the vise in. So I want to seal the surface because we've got 50% end grain and 50% straight grain, and if oil did go on there, it would wick up into the fibres of the end grain and I wouldn't be able to get it out. So that's the reason I'm doing the 2 coats now. I'll finish off with another 1 or 2 coats after that. So the last thing after that, before we finish these minor details, is I've got to cut the wedges to length, so I've got to do that yet. They're still protruding down past the apron, so I'll mark those, withdraw them, and then just cut them to length the same depth as the apron. And that's where I am at this stage. So that's my closing part on the actual construction of the bench.